is Bill Griffin. Welcome to the Different Take Podcast. Today I want to introduce you to Thomas Sowell. If you know who Thomas Sowell is, I may not say anything particularly new. Many people have never heard of Thomas Sowell. He's one of the brilliant thinkers and writers ever. The way I want to do this is I'd like to give you a biography, tell you about a couple of books that he's written, and also some quotes that I like. Thomas Sowell is now 91 years old. He's, I understand, alive and doing well. He was born in North Carolina, lived there early part of his life, then he moved to Harlem as a child. Spent the rest of his childhood there, then went on to, as a stellar student, went on to study economics, got his bachelor's at Harvard, his master's at Columbia, and studied at the University of Chicago, where he got his PhD under Milton, studied under Milton Friedman, who was there at the time. Prolific writer, has written 30 books on a wide variety of subjects, history, culture, written about race. His primary field's been economics. He began a newspaper column at the age of, I believe, 53 or 4, and wrote his newspaper column up until 2015 weekly, and he stopped doing the weekly column when he was 85 years old. So he's had amazing output and just a terrific thinker. He was never a self-promoter, although there are plenty of videos that you can find and you can see him speaking in his own voice, and they're very interesting. Thomas Sowell was a self-described Marxist until he worked 1 year in the Department of Labor and had an epiphany in which he became politically conservative, or as he described, libertarian leaning. He was an occasional guest on Rush Limbaugh's program, and Rush Limbaugh was a great admirer of Thomas Sowell and spoke of him quite often. There's been a documentary that's been done, which is, this is called Thomas Sowell. It's the driving force behind this is a Wall Street, writes for the Wall Street Journal, Jason Riley. It is called Thomas Sowell, Common Sense in a Senseless World. So I highly recommend that. It's a great documentary. Jason Riley's also completed a biography of Thomas Sowell called Maverick. So I'm sure that's a great read. That just came out recently. The two books I'd like to talk about are, the first one is called Basic Economics. This is a terrific book because it's an easy read. It's not charts and graphs and that sort of thing. It explains the science of economics in a language that is easy to understand, and it is very upfront about the concept that free market capitalism is the much more efficient means of producing goods and services and distributing them to the widest number of people than the government doing such things. From Basic Economics, I like to read you a little bit, give you a little taste of this, because this just explains the book much better than I can. And read this. This is from chapter 2. So, in the chapter discusses pricing, which really gets to the heart of the matter when it comes to economics. This is from Basic Economics, quote, the last president of the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev, is said to have asked British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, how do you see to it that people get food? The answer was that she didn't. Prices did that. Moreover, the British people were better fed than people in the Soviet Union, even though the British have not produced enough food to feed themselves in more than a century. Prices bring them food from other countries. Without the role of prices, imagine what a monumental bureaucracy it would take to see to it that the City of London alone is supplied with the tons of food of every variety which it consumes every day. Yet such an army of bureaucrats can be dispensed with. And the people that would be needed in such a bureaucracy can do productive work elsewhere in the economy because the simple mechanism of prices does the same job faster, cheaper, and better. So they kind of give you a quick taste of what basic economics well-read book. It can be used as a textbook. The second book I'd like to discuss with you is called A Conflict of Visions. This is a very interesting book. It is not as easy to read as Basic Economics. It's written in an academic fashion. It goes into great detail describing how two different visions are seen by people in their political view of the world and what ought to be done, and so forth and so on. The extended title of the book is A Conflict of Visions, Ideological Origins of Political Struggles. So within this book, Thomas Sowell goes into great detail, and all of his books are very well researched, by the way, describing as he calls, the constricted vision and the unconstricted vision. So folks that have the constricted vision view the world as human nature is imperfect, but it's fixed, and that institutions need to be developed and observed that are reliable over time, that don't change with the political winds. They're stable, and that institutions need to be developed to prevent any one person or faction from having all the power. The unconstricted vision is the idea that people view the human nature, people, as malleable and perfectible. So that in the suffering that occurs in the world with the folks that have the unconstricted view, the suffering in the world is due to the institutions, not to anything that they caused. So those institutions have to constantly upgraded and changed. It also explains that these visions exist. They've existed for a very long time, and they exist today. For example, and also, before I explain, he does not In the book, he does not promote one vision or the other vision, although it's clear that his other writings, that he views the world with the constricted eye, not the unconstricted vision. So an example of the constricted vision is that the United States Constitution is necessary to separate powers so that one particular individual group can't have power. Whereas unconstricted vision would, as long as the right people are in charge, then the institutions can be, and laws and policies can be changed, and that is the way to eliminate suffering. So it's a fairly complicated, shouldn't say complicated, but it's a not an easy book to read, but it does explain why people have the view that they have, and they might not even realize that they think the way they do. But it explains a lot, I think. Has quite a quick wit, I would say. But there's several quotes that I would like to read to you that will give you insight into what a brilliant and succinct person is. No one can really understand the political left without understanding that they are about making themselves feel superior, however much they may talk piously about what they are going to do to help others. The greatest moral claim of the political left is that they are for the masses in general and the poor in particular. That is also their greatest fraud. Even fools many leftists themselves. It even fools many leftists themselves. The first lesson of economics is scarcity. There's never enough of anything to fully satisfy all those who want it. The first lesson of politics is to disregard the first lesson of economics. When politicians discover some group that is being vocal about not having as much as they want, the solution is to give them more. Where do politicians get this more? They rob Peter to pay Paul. After a while, of course, they discover that Peter doesn't have enough. Bursting with compassion, politicians rush to this rescue. Needless to say, they do not admit that robbing Peter to pay Paul was a dumb idea in the first place. On the contrary, they now rob Tom, Dick, and Harry to help Peter. I've never understood why it is greed to want to keep the money you have earned, but not greed to want to take somebody else's money. Not giving a lot of commentary here because it's not necessary really, but the next quote, you could fill in a lot of politicians in place of Obama, but here goes. One of Obama's great gifts is the ability to say things that are absolutely absurd and make them sound not only plausible, but as inspiring. Are children supposed to learn to act like adults when so much of what they see on television shows adults acting like children? When you want to help people, you tell them the truth. When you want to help yourself, you tell them what they want to hear. Racism does not have a good track record. It's been tried out for a long time, and you'd think by now we'd want to put an end to it instead of putting it under new management. It's amazing that people who think we cannot afford to pay for doctors, hospitals, and medication somehow think that we can afford to pay for doctors, hospitals, medication, and a government bureaucracy to administer it. This is probably my favorite. People who enjoy meetings should not be in charge of anything. So those are a few quotes that give you some insight into Thomas Sowell. I highly recommend you learn more about him if you don't know who he is. There's he's never been a self-promoter, although has made various speeches and television appearances and so forth. He did not do a lot of television shows in which he could have comments chopped up and taken out of context. So he's never used as a talking head in that way. Interesting thing about Thomas Sowell, I think, is that he's never really been criticized by political pundits or leftists. I think part of that is his books are so, and his thoughts are so well researched, and his columns were so well researched. It's very difficult to poke holes at him. It's a lot easier for people to, I think, just ignore him. For example, I'm sure Al Sharpton, you would think, would know who Thomas Sowell is. But if he were asked, he would probably feign ignorance. That's the suspicion I have. The few criticisms I've read on the internet deal with, they're really quite personal. They will say something such as, well, I care about poor people. Thomas Sowell obviously doesn't. When you read his books and you really think about what he's saying, you can't come away with that impression. The interesting thing, I think, is with Thomas Sowell is there's in the public and writing and his columns and so forth for such a long time. I think in some of his television interviews, or if he had been invited to debate on television with a leftist, I think that would be a bad thing for the leftists. He's tremendously quick on his feet, and no one likes to get embarrassed, and he is very outspoken, doesn't hold back. So, in summary, I hope you've learned something about Thomas Sowell. Maybe if you haven't heard of him before, that's the primary goal here is read his books, read his columns, look at his videos. You'll learn a lot. And also Milton Friedman, kind of same category. Both very quick on their feet and able to explain their thoughts. And there's actually videos of both of them together. It's good watch. You'll find it very interesting. Well, thank you for listening. It's Different Take Podcast, and I really appreciate it. Check out our website, check out our platforms, and please leave me any comments. If you got any questions or don't agree with me, especially if you have criticism of Thomas Sowell, I'd like to read those. Thank you.